Do you believe in life after death? Have you ever heard the voice of spirit? Well, both of my guests today have, and they've been recording the voices of spirit for the past 14 years. And they're here today to prove that there really is no death and there are no dead. So join me on Let's Talk Paranormal next. Both of my guests today, Tom and Lisa Butler, have been recording the voices of spirit for the last 14 years. Lisa has a bachelor's degree in psychology, and Tom is a Bachelor of Science in Electronics Engineering. They're both the directors of the American Association for Electronic Voice Phenomena, and also the author of this incredible, outstanding book, There Is No Death and There Are No Dead. Lisa, Tom, welcome to the show today.
Thank you for having us on.
It's great to have you here. Now, for the viewers at home that know nothing about EVP, what is it?
It's the recording of paranormal voices on any kind of recording media. Normally, the voices are not heard until the media recording, the tape, is played back. It's been around for quite a long time. We're using cassette recorders to get the voices, but several of our members, in fact, we have gotten the voices on our answering machines, voicemail. They even come in on voicemail. So there's a lot of different ways to record them.
Mm-hmm. And how long has this been going on for you?
A little over 14 years, actually, since we recorded our first voice. Mm-hmm. And it was an interesting happening. We decided that we would record every day at the same time, and we'd just give it a try, like for 7 days. And I think we started on a Thursday, and we were both corporate workers. On Saturday morning, I woke up, and I'm thinking, put the crystals around the recording equipment. And I thought, and I went on and did my chores. And the thought it was like almost obsessing on the thought to get the crystals. And they were nothing. They're just, little baubles that we had in the bookcases, etc. And so we put them around the recording equipment and did another recording that night, another experiment, our third experiment. And when we listened back to the recording, there was this voice that said, "Crystals help."
Wow.
And I didn't sleep for 4 days. It's like, really, when you hear something like that, it changes reality so much. I mean,
exactly.
What is that? Why is that there? Mm-hmm. The rest is history.
Right. Tom, were you skeptical at any point throughout this?
Well, being a good engineer, I had a lot of doubt. For most people, I think that the idea of recording dead people's voices on electronic equipment is a little over the top. But what we found out, I've studied metaphysics for years prior to that, and I was willing to sort of give it a try. And when I found that other people were recording it around the world, that it wasn't something that was just one person came up with a bright idea and said, I can do it, like so many of these phenomena is. In our case, I couldn't hear the voices myself for quite a while. It's something of an acquired skill. But what I did finally was I could recognize that noise is being modulated. Somebody's talking in there that shouldn't be in there. And then finally I did hear one, and it was a very meaningful one. And I could tell you that it was a woman speaking. She was a very airy breath, a very beautiful sounding voice, and a very meaningful phrase. And I heard it, and that was the first one I heard. And in this particular one, we were worried about what happened to a bird and should we have saved the baby bird? And the EVP, the lady said, release and remember. And that's a very profound thing to say. Release and remember. It's good advice for all of us. And
Yes.
after that, I was convinced. That was it.
So the range of voices that you hear then are male, female, children?
Older people, you can tell the voice is older. One of the things, when you were asking him about being skeptical, one of the things that the skeptics say, the first thing they say is that we're picking up radio waves, or you can't see waves, that we're picking up radio or cell phone or TV. And there's several experiments have been done in Faraday cages, which screens out all of those waves, and EVP is still recorded. So there's just no scientific explanation why the voices are picked up.
Now, what about the sounds of animals? Have you
Yes,
picked those
yes.
up?
Sometimes. And it is characteristic for an EVP, for the phenomenal voice, to be in the language of the person who's recording them, or a language that they understand. And we've picked up sounds of animals barking, clearly barking in the background, appropriately too, when we know that this particular animal's on the other side and the entity's saying, here's Corky, and bark, bark. But we've also picked up some really interesting messages that we wonder if we fully understand how intelligent these animals are. So there's a lot to be learned about it still.
Right. Now, it's true to say that when we cross over, we don't have a voice box. So how is spirit able to come through having no voice box?
Can I
How does
answer
it
that one?
work?
Sure.
Some of our co-workers in Italy have researched this quite a bit, and they've analyzing the voices. They can see that they do not see the fundamental frequency of the voice box and the frequencies. But they see instead is the available noise is, like they call it, a thickening of the noise to form the voice. So it's very definitely phenomenal. And because we don't have that fundamental frequency, sometimes it's difficult to understand a word that one person will say, that's very clear, another person will say, well, I'm not sure what it says. So it makes it complicated, but we know that it's very definitely a paranormal voice.
So why do you think it's easier for some discarnate souls to come through than others?
We don't know. The connection, the interest, I would believe there's a lot of fun things to do when you get over there. And maybe you want to go explore, maybe you have other plans and you just don't do that. But it is correct. I got into this because I wanted to hear from my father. He was an engineer, so you would figure that he would get through to me this way. Instead, I had dreams. I had very vivid dreams that he was all right after he crossed. And it was my mother who was very different religion than I would say we are. I mean, she didn't even know we did this because she would have thought that we were going to that place where it burns,
Right.
And so we never mentioned it. But 2 years after she died, we were doing something else. And she came through at the end of a recording. And what's interesting, they don't have a voice box, and yet people recognize the voice. And that is so fascinating. There's so much we don't know. But people will say, that is the voice of my child. I mean, that's the same voice,
Right.
even though the person is not alive.
So it's very, very distinctive.
Yes.
Very
One of the
distinctive.
things that is important too, I think, is that just as you have Michael Jordans of the athletic world and the athletics, we have Michael Jordans of our recording world. And the people who study this and practice, some are a lot better than others just naturally, and some of them improve over practice. And I think that when you go over to the other side, some of us are going to be better able of managing the energy to communicate back, and some of us aren't. It's the old bell curve again.
Because personality plays a role in that,
I think so.
depending on your own
And
personality.
desire and all of those things.
So what is the first example we're going to hear, Lisa?
Well, it's a typical EVP. We wanted to hear one that's more normal. These come in low. Usually it's a soft voice. A gentleman had died, and we were trying to find out. No one knew his name. We knew there had been a death. A man fell off a ladder into a pool. And so you'll hear my voice saying, "What is your name?" And then you hear him say, "Jason." And I think you hear a tape where you hear my voice, and then you'll just hear his name.
Okay, let's take a listen at that example.
Can you tell us your name?
So were you able to make out his name?
Yes, we can hear you ask the question, and we
then
can
he
hear
says
Jason. Yeah. Obviously, you've had to turn that up pretty high so
Yes,
that
that's-
the people can hear that.
And when you're listening, when you want to record EVP, for people out there that would like to try this, they need to hear or listen to for the voice in the noise. As you do it more, they come in stronger. You'll make a connection and you'll be able to bring the voices in louder. But that's a typical.
Right. What about the second one, Lisa?
All right. It was very interesting because we did this at Winchester Mystery House, and I don't think we thought we were going to get anything because there's so many crowds that go through there. And it was right outside the bedroom in which Sarah Winchester died, and it's a man's voice, and he says, "It's not redemption."
Ooh, let's have a listen to that one. You can hear it.
The redemption is tougher. on
Yes,
that.
it's not quite
one of the
finished.
difficulties of learning how to be able to listen to these, is besides them being down very low, is that they have strange cadences to them. So instead of saying it's not redemption, I might say it's not redemption, like that. The emphasis is strange.
Yeah,
often.
they
And
tend to.
oftentimes they're faster than
Right.
normal speech.
Right.
It's the pauses will seem normal, but the speech is somehow faster.
Right.
And the next one, why don't you talk about that? That's the one in the seance room at Winchester Mystery House where...
The seance room, Sarah Winchester was a spiritualist, and she held seances on a regular basis, we understand. And when the tour guide took us into the room, he said, "There's 3 doors. You just came through a normal door. That door over there has a latch on this side, but not on the other. You go
Right.
in there, you're stuck in a room. This door over here, it's a normal door, but when you open it and step out, it's 18 feet to the ground." And we were recording at the time, and right after that, you hear this lady that sounds for all the world like a little old lady saying, worried, "You should never step out." And then you can just tell that it's got to be Sarah.
Okay, let's play that example. That's incredible.
Well, it got more interesting. It was, for a house that we didn't think anything was going to happen, it got even more interesting. As we were going through the house, we came to the front doors, and everybody kind of went along. And I was intrigued with the Tiffany glass. It's very beautiful. The front door is full of Tiffany glass. And I lean over. Now, this is sunny California. And I lean over to look at the Tiffany glass, and I take my glasses off. I had sunglasses off, and they just fogged up, just like that. And I went, oh my gosh, huge cold spot. So I yelled at Tom to come back, and we started recording. And a man says, first of all, I think the next EVP we'll hear, he says, David Wills. He gives us his name, and then he says that he's a housekeeper and he's protecting the house. So I think there's a series of EVPs here. The first one says David Wills. I have said, who's here, and he says David Wills.
Okay, we'll listen to that one.
Is there anyone here? Is there anyone here?
Very quickly spoken.
Is there anyone here?
Yeah, you can hear it.
Right.
It is quickly spoken, but you can hear it.
Right.
I
And
hope the viewers at home can hear what we're talking about, if they can hear it clearly as we're hearing it. Before we go on to some more examples, Lisa, anybody that wants to try this for themselves at home, what would they do?
We would suggest taking anything that records. Don't go out and buy equipment. Spend a lot of money until you see if you want to do this and enjoy it. But a cassette recorder. Everybody today, people use computers and record the voices on computers, straight into a computer. So you simply keep your recording short. We would say no more than 5 minutes. Ask 3 or 4 questions and leave space for them to speak to you. We have one member that read about EVP. She was doing an exercise and using an exercise tape, and she thought, ooh, this sounds interesting. She knew the back side of the tape was blank, flipped it over and said, is there anyone here? And her name was Carol, and this voice came back that said, Cowl, or something like that.
Oh my gosh.
So take whatever you've got.
So it's literally just setting up a recorder
That's right.
and asking the question and leaving space for someone to reply.
That's
Yes.
correct.
Now-
and then
now-
listening back.
Nowadays, a lot of the people that are doing ghost hunting, they'll take a recorder like this. It's just a simple, what we call IC recorder or digital note taker.
Okay.
And this happens to be a Panasonic QR80. And they're using it as a recording device out on field hunting, and you can see it. It's so easy. It's so easy to handle that it's a natural for them. And it turns out, especially in haunted locations, you can get really good EVP with it.
Right.
You do have to use a computer with it, though, because you need to download it into
Right.
something.
What would you say to people who are listening to the show today and think they are just hearing a noise and they're thinking they're hearing some kind of a human voice?
There's some of them, and maybe we can go, since the show is short, maybe we could go down to some of the other examples, like starting at around, we have some that start around 24.
Okay.
They're so clear. What we've just played for you is the typical what people should expect.
Right.
But the voices can come in very clearly, and there's just no question.
Right. Which is the next one you'd like to talk about?
It's number 24, and Sarah Estep was recording at Point Lookout Lighthouse. And if it's possible for them to play it, this voice, very kind of deadpan voice, says, I was seeing the war, and many Civil War soldiers died there. It was also a hospital and a prisoner of war camp.
So let's have a listen to that one, Lisa, that you're explaining.
I will see the moon. I will see the moon. I will see the moon.
You can hear it.
Yeah, it sounds like a young man, kind of sad. So you get everything from that. That would be at a haunted location. And often the voices come in louder at a haunted location. The next example is a person's father. And this is what we all want, don't we? We want to hear from
Of course,
our parents.
our loved ones. Yeah.
And she was recording. She felt a presence around her. She often has a little recorder, and she records on her way to work. And then she'll listen back to it. And she heard a particular song and said something, you know, about, boy, that really reminds me of you, Dad, and turned her recorder on and got this voice, and it says, I love you.
Let's listen to that one. I have gone cold. I mean, you can. There's no mistaking that. You can hear it very
It's very
clearly.
true. It's very true.
And that, again, it's a male voice, and the girl recognized her father's voice, and then the appropriateness of the statement and the timing, everything, very evidential.
When you're recording these voices, are you getting any sensations in the room?
Some people do more than others.
Sometimes and sometimes
does.
not. Luckily, sometimes not, because a couple of investigations that we've been on, I'm glad I didn't hear at the time. I would have left. I would have left because they were telling us to leave.
Oh, really?
Yes. So it just depends on
On what's happening.
exactly.
We had an email question from Vicky who asks the question, has EVP taken over the good old-fashioned method of a seance? What would you say to that, Tom?
No.
Not at all. Some people are more attracted to using technology and like to have control of their mediumship, and other people still prefer to work with a medium. And the kind of messages that can be brought through with a good medium, much more what the medium senses more than what we can get sometimes in the audio. The nice thing about the EVP, though, is that just about anybody can do it. You don't have to be a practicing medium to do it. And also, you don't have to trust a medium.
Right,
But it hasn't replaced one.
it hasn't.
The voices, though, it's physical phenomena, and it takes energy. And
course.
they're usually short. You know, we're getting longer ones now, like you should never step out is really quite long for an EVP. But a medium can tell you lots and lots of stuff.
Right.
So it's a different thing.
Let me ask you this question, Lisa. Natalie asks, if you have a psychic ability anyway, would you attract spirit to come through, even more so, using this method?
Yes.
You would?
We believe so, yes. One thing we say about EVP, and which is really great, is that anybody can do it. I certainly didn't think I had any psychic ability. That's what attracted me to it. It's like, okay, I'm not John Edward, but maybe this would work. And it seems that anybody can, if they can record EVP if they just have a little patience.
Right, and to be open-minded, of course, as
Right.
well.
Yeah.
That's a necessity.
If you look at spiritualism, for instance, spiritualists believe that mediumship can be taught. It's not something you're born with. We're all born with some capability, and that capability, like a good muscle, can be exercised and trained, and mediumship can be taught. So everybody should leave open the possibility that they're a medium.
Right. What is the next example, Lisa?
This is kind of fun. This young lady uses a coffee pot for sound. We believe that the entities, if there's sound around, they can make their voices louder. She actually records with her coffee pot percolating, and if you listen closely, you'll hear the coffee pot, and it's a child's voice this time, and it's kind of sad. It says, "They get sick."
Ooh, let's listen to the coffee pot one.
Charlie Claypool's.
Charlie Claypool.
Okay. They get sick.
Yeah.
You can hear that.
She has the most interesting website called Coffee Pot Mom, I think it
Or
is.
coffee pot ghost.
Coffee Pot
Coffee Pot
Ghost.
Ghost.
Okay. Anyway, it's a very interesting website to go to. There's a lot of examples.
She has a
there.
lot of EVP on there.
Wow. And whilst we're talking of examples of websites, there are a couple that I just wanted to explain here where our viewers could go to if they were interested to know more. One that we were able to find was voicesfromparadise.co.uk, www.voicesfromparadise.co.uk, and then we have another one, www.mindstudies.com, which is actually the Center for the Study of Survival of Consciousness. So you might want to check those out and see what those are all about. What about a next example?
Okay, this is very clear. This was actually louder than the other people's voices, and it was recorded at the scene of an accident. And the EVP says, "This is my dream." The people it didn't make any sense to them, but they went back and reported to the mother that they had recorded this. She got all excited, ran into the girl's room and came out, and she had written a poem called "This Is My Dream" just days before she died in an automobile accident. This was recorded by Erlen Babcock.
Interesting. Let's listen to this one.
This is my dream. This is my dream. This is my dream.
That is
Very-
amazing.
Yeah, that's probably 1 in a million, because again, everybody usually says the EVPs are very low, you know, little tiny voices. This was actually louder, and there was no one around.
Right. This is obviously a person that is definitely wanting to make the contact
That's
known.
correct. That's correct.
So the energy level changes.
Right.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And also, look, Erlen Babcock is a long-time researcher, and he has some very interesting phenomena occur around him. He's going to speak at our conference coming up in June.
Now, where is your conference going to be held at?
Reno, Nevada, in a haunted hotel, and
Ooh.
they can get information at our website, aaevp.com. There's a banner up there. It's the first week in June, and there's several good speakers. There's a gentleman that will help people develop their own mediumship, their own psychic ability. There are a couple of people that will be teaching how to record, so it should be very interesting.
Excellent. Do we have time for another example, perhaps? What's the next one, Lisa?
Well, this is good. This example was recorded by Susan Beauvais, and what's nice about this example, you can hear the two women talking. You're going to hear two women talking, and then you're going to hear a child's voice say, "I see now," and then near to the door, and then you hear them talking again. So you can hear an EVP in the middle of people talking.
Ooh, let's listen to this one.
Pitch black. Pitch black. Pitch black.
You can hear it.
Yes.
You can hear it.
And they've had lines come across the TV that's unplugged. This child's very active. And it's always, they record in the house, and the voice is always the same as this child. So.
And what about another one?
Okay, the last one that we have is from the UK.
Ooh,
Yes.
good old UK.
What was the name of the man that, David
David
V. And they went into a haunted castle that had a drawbridge that was removed in 1500. And they put their recorder in the area that the mechanism for the drawbridge would have been. Nothing there now. I mean, they called it the drawbridge closet.
Right.
He put it in there. The place was closed. They got permission to leave the recorder. They actually left the recorder and left. And this is very interesting because this is an EVP that is more recording of time. You're going to hear, is this a long one?
Yeah, this is a long one. It's we call it a recorder ghost because it isn't communication as such, but you're going to hear, it sounds like a couple adult men coming in. We think they're speaking an ancient dialect of Latin. There's a little boy or a little girl talking with them. They're routinely lowering the gate.
Right.
So you will hear this one time.
Let's listen to this one.
Quite long.
It is, isn't it? It is a long
You can
one.
hear that chain going.
Yeah, exactly. That's
That's
clear.
a Halloween EVP.
Yeah,
Yes.
it certainly is. It
But
certainly
it
is.
does also, it points out just how complex this whole subject is, because that, again, sounds, we believe, a recording of past that's somehow embedded in the ethers.
Lisa, thank you. Tom, thank you for joining us today. And I really do recommend the book, There Is No Death and There Are No Dead. It's definitely one to read, I can assure you. Join me next time on Let's Talk Paranormal. Bye-bye.